All right, well, John, well, hey, thanks so much for doing this. I'm really, really excited for this episode. I think people are gonna get so much value out of it. And so, just talk a little bit about who you are. You are sales professor at Arizona State, but man, you've done so much over a lifetime, just in sales and business. And I'd love to take everybody back to sort of the beginning. I want to tell people where that started, and I especially want to talk about the sales drive that you have and the success, because I think what is really unique about you, sir, is you are not an academic. You're a practitioner of your craft, and I think that's what's so unique about you, and especially being, a college professor who is not all about the textbook. And we'll talk a little bit later, but you actually wrote the textbook. But you are somebody who actually did it very successfully at a very high level in your own career. And so I think that's really unique. I think that brings a ton of value to your students, and I'm excited to talk about that today. So again, a couple things I want to hit on throughout this time that we have, but I'd like to go back to a little bit earlier. Before we talk about the ASU program, tell us about where was your start in sales? How did you get going? Where did the passion for sales ignite originally?
The sales, it started with me. It's funny. I was a waiter in TGI Fridays when I just got out of college, and there was a CEO of a bank, a very large bank, who used to come into the restaurant all the time, and him and I just got along really well. And he told me one day, he's like, you belong in sales. Your personality is you have a universal personality. He said you connect with people, and he said, I'd love to have you work at my bank. And I didn't know anything about banking. I was just coming out of college, and so sure enough, he hired me, and I started out in the call center of a major bank, which was good for me because you take all the inbound problems, ranging from lost checkbooks to switch money to open a mutual fund, whatever it is, was coming into that call center. So I learned a lot. And then they moved me into a real estate loan officer role inside of an actual branch. So I was one of those people, when you came in the bank, I was sitting there in the little office to the right and started doing home loans at 100% commission.
Wow.
I did that for quite a while. It was good because I learned how to survive. I had no choice. Either you go out and create loans, or you don't get a paycheck.
Yeah.
But I also learned how to cross-sell with other bankers, and that taught me how, if I can take care of them, they'll take care of me. Because one thing, when you do a home loan, you see how their credit report, how many cars they have, boats they have, money they have. So I'm able to tell other bankers, hey, you might want to look at this person. So cross-selling is something I learned as well. And that's what started. You want me to keep going on how my career went, or
I'd love. Well, I want to hear more about that, because you were extremely successful at that, and so that led you into you became CMO, and talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's funny because I did this particular sales job for quite a while, and then one day, a chief operating officer of a national engineering firm, multidisciplinary engineering firm, calls me on a Saturday and says, how would you like to run my marketing department? And I said, I don't know X about marketing. I'm a sales guy. He said, no, but John, that's the thing. He's like, you're good with relationships. Your mindset is to get business in the door. He goes, my marketing department right now has about 12 people, and they don't have a leader who thinks outbound. We're reacting to everything. He's like, so your mindset would be good for us. Don't worry about the graphics designer and the communicators and the proposal writers. They will do the job, but we need a sales mindset in this company. And that was interesting to me. So that's when I made the pivot to my actual title was a senior vice president of marketing and business development, which is known as a chief marketing officer of a national company. And that's where I cut my teeth in leadership and management. That's when I started to use sales in a different capacity. So,
well,
there you have it.
Yeah, so I love that. And one of the things I want to bring up too is, with your students now, you have something called the one-stroke philosophy. And you talk about how that was really
Yeah.
born out of when you were in this 100% commission sales job, and you were fully responsible for your own paycheck. 100% of the money that you know brought in to put food on the table was up to you. It was up to the calls that you made and the appointments that you set. And so um, the one stroke thing is great because I think it not only applies to sales, but it just applies to life in general. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I could do it one of two ways. I could just tell you about it, or I could share my screen and show it to you. Which way would you like to do it?
Um,
Just hear it, or you want to see it?
yeah, well, I'll tell us about it first, and then we can I can actually link some of the pictures after.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So a few years ago, I took notice. I don't golf that much. Maybe 5 times a year, 8 times a year. I'm not a golfer, but I noticed that in the 2017 Masters tournament, I was looking at the winners, and the guy who came in first place, it was Sergio Garcia. So after 4 rounds of golf, 279 shots, he won $1.9 million. I want to say.
Yeah.
The guy who came in second place actually tied him after 4 rounds of golf, and they had to go to a 19th hole on that fourth day of golf and have a one-stroke playoff in which Sergio beat him in overtime by one, and that was Justin Rose. So he came in second. He made $1.1 million. Now I promise you, this is where it's all going. I noticed that Ricky Fowler was in 11th place, I believe, and he was about 2 strokes off per day, which is, if you think about it, just 2 golf balls difference in performance per day.
Yeah.
Well, his compensation was $275,000, and then of course the guy who came in last was about 4 strokes off per day. I can hold those golf balls in one hand, right? But he did come in last on that last day, and he made $27,000. So it hit me that golf is very synonymous to business. A little stroke here, a little stroke there. And any one of these golfers can win on any given day, but sometimes just one little swing or one stroke is the difference in making $500,000 more or $250,000 more. And I believe that works in business as well. Success is not because someone's better than you. It's just that maybe they approached it differently. Here's a class example. I had a student one time who I explained the one stroke, and she went into her boss and she started to do what you call close the loop. And every time she got a project done, she told her boss, "My project is complete." And he told her, "You're the only one that comes in and tells me. The other 4, I have to go and ask them if the project's complete." Well, he eventually made her the supervisor and gave her a $6,000 raise. Now, she wasn't better than the other 4, but she was one stroke better than them. And not only did she get a $6,000 more raise, which is that's a car payment per year, but her title changed, so she got a leadership role, all because she was one stroke better than someone else. And I believe in sales, it's the same thing. It's the little things. It's how you talk to a client. Do you follow up? How do you respond? Do you cross-sell? It's just a lot of little things done well with a difference in you making $500,000 in your career more, or even per year more than someone else. Okay, and that's the philosophy. And I'm going to write a book on that.
You need to, because it's so smart, it's so good, and it applies to, I think, everybody in every area of life. It just makes sense. So let's talk about the sales program, because you're at the helm of a a nationally recognized, award-winning sales team there at Arizona State. You are a award-winning professor at the graduate level, at the undergraduate level. And again, I'll say it like I did at the beginning. I think the reason that I love you so much is because you've actually gone out and done it. You're not just teaching it from a textbook, and in fact, you wrote the textbook. So how did you, when you came into ASU, what was the status of the sales program then, and how have you built it to what it is now? And then after that, we can talk about, the specifics of each student and what you're teaching them. But I'd like to just hear how that all began.
Sure. So right about 2015, the director of the program, I came on board. She was just building a sales platform at Arizona State, so I was tied to her at the hip right away. And so I headed up what you call sales scholars, and she headed up another club. And we'll talk about these in a little bit. But over the next few years, we began to enter more and more competitions, bring more and more sponsors corporate executives into ASU, and we started to really get some runway, if you will, and things started to click little by little, and it took us about, I would say, 4 years, which is about 2019, where we really just took off. I mean, everything started to click, and it's a successful program. We get in national, regional, and local sales competitions. We bring in executives to teach and advise and work with students one-on-one on how to overcome objection, how to negotiate. So our students are learning from the best people in society how to sell, and they're ready on day one.
Wow.
For many of these corporate Fortune 5 jobs. So they're ready on day one.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned the competitions, and you guys are doing sales competitions, and I've been a part of those as well when I was at ASU. Why are those important? What do those teach students? What is it about the sales competition that means something to them after somebody goes out and graduates and is in their first job?
There's a couple moving parts to this answer, Evan. First of all, they learn the process, which is introduction, listen, sell, close. So they learn how to walk in a room and build rapport. The second thing is they're taught to listen first. The old saying, people want a quarter-inch hole. They don't want a quarter-inch drill. So when you identify what the need is, then you can make a thoughtful suggestion on what they might want to buy or purchase. So intro, listen, then sell, and then always, always, always ask to move forward. Sometimes that's let's sign here, let's move forward, or sometimes it's let's schedule another meeting. But regardless, you're either going to get a meeting or a signature. That's the mindset that our students. So that's why it's critical and beneficial to our students to do that. Second, I think it validates their confidence that when you compete against the best sales students in the country, if not the world, and you come in second place or third place or even win, it validates that you can hold your own with anybody.
Yep.
And these competitions, by the way, are judged by Fortune 500 companies. So it's the people that are deciding who's got the best game are the people doing this at the highest levels. So it validates it all around.
What do you think? And I have my own ideas about this, but what do you see students that are they're at the national level doing these competitions, and sometimes I'm curious, what is the thing that makes them succeed and win versus the ones that completely crumble? And you and I have both seen it. Like, they come out of a room in tears. What's the difference there? I mean, is it just a few things? Is it one stroke, or what is it that separates them in a national competition?
Well, it is a lot of one strokes. It's sometimes it's we sometimes anticipate an objection that someone will say, "Hey, you're late for the meeting." And when you go to a sales competition and you open the door to come in and sell, a person says, "You're late." Like, we're ready for that. So we're one stroke better than a lot of other schools. But more so, it's the mindset. It's believing you can win. One of the things I work with my students on is you have to believe to a fault that you're as good, if not better, than everybody that's going to be there. And I always tell them, if we lose, we better lose with a bloody nose, 2 black eyes, and a beating, because we're not going to any competition and be, backslapped by anybody. We're going to brawl. So I get them in the right mindset. They believe they're going to win, and then I prepare them. Then they're like pit bulls.
Gosh, I love that. And, I mean, you've been so good at this, and I really believe that it comes from you having so much success in your own career of sales. You really know what happens out there. There's a lot of there's a lot of schools out there that don't even have a sales program. Why is that so important? Obviously, it's to prepare these people for their first sales job. But why is it important to have people going through these sales competitions multiple times a year? Is it really just the experience? Is it the exposure to the companies? What's the real benefit to these students?
Well, of course, we want to get students ready for corporate jobs, particular professional sales jobs. But I tell my students, there's room in the tent for everybody, because for the rest of your life, you will be in the business of selling. You're going to apply for a job. You're selling yourself. You're going to sell a car. You're going to sell a home. You're going to ask someone out on a date. You're going to ask someone to marry you. I mean, it doesn't matter what topic we pick. You for the rest of your life are going to have to make the case for what you want, right? And I think the skill set we learn in the sales program of, hey, objections are going to come. People are going to say no to you sometimes.
Yeah.
That's okay. We expect that.
Yeah.
And then we teach them how to get around that. So our students, all of them, whether they do the competitions or curveballs, that's okay. We're waiting for those curveballs, and we know exactly how to handle it when it comes.
Yeah.
And our program, actually a lot of sales programs have proven that going through this, there's 33% less turnover rate. There's 50% more ramp-up time with the students with the program. And they tend to make businesses $150,000 to $200,000 more in the first couple of years because of their day one readiness.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's good for everybody.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. I remember talking to a few companies when I was in school, and I remember hearing, yeah, we get great students that have sales degrees or whatever, but they're not prepared for the actual real world of what we do. And I believe that
Sure.
I believe that, Sales Scholars really does that. I mean, it actually exposes people. Well, first off, before we go there though, talk about exactly what Sales Scholars is, what it entails.
Okay. At Arizona State, we have a pro sales, which is open to everybody in the School of Business, and we bring in corporate executives, and they give talks on, you name the topic, closing the deal, whatever.
Sure.
But our Sales Scholars is an elite group, very tough club to get into. I am the faculty director for it. We have about 20. It used to be 15, now it's 20. And they are called our naval SEALs of the sales program. They have good grades. They have sales on the resume, leadership on their resume. They dress in suits every week. We meet every Friday, and we bring in people like, Jeff York and Dave Swedler of Waste Management, and we work with these students on raw skills, how to walk in a room with confidence. We call it executive presence, how to ask to move the conversation forward. And once we go through this with corporate executives, their confidence goes up. They know that this is the right thing to do. Their behaviors begin to change, and their confidence just naturally rises. Actually, students come back a year or two after they leave the program, and when they shake my hand, I'm intimidated by them, because they really come a long way. And it's like, yeah, so that's what Sales Scholars is. The Naval SEALs, they are trained and absolutely ruthless, and many of them go on to six-figure careers immediately.
Wow. And what kind of companies are these kids going to?
You have software companies such as Paycom and Veeam. You've got blue-collar ones like Waste Management, in which, every business, retail center, and facility in the country needs their waste removed, so you find accounts, right? We have companies such as Tom James, the suit company. It's a really well-rounded group of products and services, ranging from software to clothing to like Waste Management. And Pepsi is another one, PepsiCo. To be able to go and sell to stores and keep relationships. So it's really open for the gamut.
That's great. I know a lot of people that have come out of your class, myself included, your Essentials of Selling class. And I'll tell you, the biggest piece of feedback that I always hear is, John's class is real world stuff that I can actually use. It's not BS from a textbook. It's real. It's legit. He's legit. And you know what? I took this thing that he said, and I went and used it to, I don't know, help a conversation with my girlfriend or my boyfriend or my boss. Like, people actually apply it. So I wanted to know more about that. I mean, what are some of the things that you're talking about in these classes? Because obviously it's the classes Essentials of Selling, but it really transcends that. It goes into every single area. So are you talking about, every piece to the sale, or are you talking about a lot of real life, real world stuff in there as well?
We apply the real world, sales to the real world, and there's a lot of things to talk about. For example, students and people in general, especially the students that I teach at Arizona State, will email 5 to 1 versus a phone call. So they're 5 times more likely to do a text or an email versus calling somebody.
Yeah.
So we actually do it in the classroom. We'll do an exercise where why is it more effective to actually call somebody? Well, you can hear their tone of voice. Because when you just look at a word in an email or on a text message, the word can mean anything. Like the words "that's it" could mean "that's it." That's it. That's it. That's where we're going. It could mean so many different things, but what gives it meaning is your tone of voice and your body language, right? So I help the students understand if someone's mad at you, don't you want to get on the phone or get them in a room and iron it out, right? Like don't send an email and hope that they may or may, you have more weapons when you're in a room with someone. You got confidence, you got a suit on a phone call, you got tone of voice. You can say, Bob, I'm seriously sorry for what causing you that issue. You're more genuine, right? So we learn that in the real world, these concepts can apply to you immediately. And I notice that my students they'll say, "Hey John, I got to follow up on a job interview. What do you recommend I do?" I say, "Call them,
Yeah.
not send an email." Right? And this is the one stroke. Everyone else will email from different colleges, but not you, not at Arizona State. You're going to make a call. And in fact, I even recommend do Zoom because like we're doing right now, you can see my body language, you can see my tone of voice, you can see how I look. Like I'm more powerful doing this than emailing you answers to these questions, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you brought me on, because you could have emailed me these questions, posted somewhere, but we're talking.
Right. That's a great point. It's all about getting in front of somebody if you have the option to get in front of them instead of just sending them an email or shooting them a text. I really like that. I want to talk a little bit about kind of the success and failure of a salesperson. I think you have a really solid beat on this because you see it so clearly and so transparently from people that are graduating college. You really get to see the emotional roller coaster that they go through. And I'm curious about, you talked about Sales Scholars pumps out students that a lot of them are making 6 figures their first 12 months out of college. What does that do to a person? Like what separates somebody that goes out and crushes it versus somebody that may not crush it? Are there is it character traits or is it just habit and process? What is that makes them successful?
It gets down to the one stroke. One of the things I talk about in my book and in the classroom is when you get into the corporate world, one of the most common things I hear in the first 6 months is my boss no longer loves me, or my boss says I'm underperforming. So let me back up here. So one of the things we work on with the students is that on day one, you ask your boss to say, I would like this first year to go well. Okay, so could we meet every few weeks or every month, whatever your comfort level is, boss? And I'd like to just get some feedback on how I'm doing, because I use this example of it's called an in-flight correction. When a plane is off 2 degrees, no big deal for a couple minutes, but in about a half hour, it's going to be 95 miles off course. Now you have a problem. So I say, do these in-flight corrections with your boss, because in 2 weeks, they say, yeah, you're doing a good job, but I'd like to see this. Okay. So you make that in-flight correction. The problem is most students don't meet with their boss regularly. They just get in, they do their job. The first couple of weeks are great. 3 months into it, their plane is drifting. Then they have a 6-month review and go, you're not performing.
Yeah.
And they're like, John, I'm stressed out. I'm not going to make it. And I think a lot of these things could be corrected by just taking the initiative to tell your boss, I'd like to get off on the right foot. I'd like some feedback. No boss is going to tell you no, right? So this is how you keep in good graces with your boss. And then 6 months when they do your review, they can't tell you you're doing a bad job because you would have known that 3 months ago.
Right.
You can make these in-flight corrections along the way. And I think that's one of the reasons some people do well right out of the gate and some people don't.
We talk a lot of, that's really good. And you and I talk a lot about people that around the 6-month mark, sometimes they start to have this almost like a depression. And it's kind of a lull, and maybe they've crushed it at the beginning, and now it's dropping off a little bit. And you're extremely successful in pulling people out of that. Why do people get into that, especially students, especially people that are young, just graduating? Why is it that the 6 month, maybe even the year mark, they start to hit that low point? Like, what causes that?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, it's natural to, we spend years in the trenches with them, walking through the forest, if you will, and all of a sudden they graduate school. Now they're walking through the forest alone. So you naturally look around, you hear things, your insecurities creep in because you don't have anybody holding your hand anymore.
Yeah.
So 6 months is natural to wonder, am I going to make it through the forest?
Right.
That's okay, right? Some of the ways we approach that is Maslow's theory is a great thing I use in my classroom because once you've got to a level in the theory that, all right, I got a job, I'm making it. The problem is that some students will get at $125,000 a year or 90, whatever their income is, they get comfortable. I'm making enough to pay my bills, and that's the devil. It almost levels off, and they become complacent, which opens them to a boss saying, "Hey, you're doing good, but there's so much more you can be doing. Come on, And
Yeah.
so complacency sets in. So one of the things myself and your dad and others tell people is you haven't built wealth yet. You haven't gotten to a point where you can be complacent. You got a long way to go. This is a 35-year run. And anybody that's lived in the world knows how expensive it is. I mean, heck, you go to the grocery store, you'll get $55 in gas, $150 in groceries, and you come home and say, I just spent $220 just now. So, I mean, imagine when you got a mortgage and car insurance and children and this and that.
Yeah.
So I tell students, the demons will creep in. It's natural to be scared in the forest, but you've not built wealth. You have to just stay focused and just tell yourself, I'm going through this forest. If other people got through this forest, I'm getting through this forest. And keep moving. Keep saving your money and keep being successful. Do not compare yourself to other people. Worry about you. Set daily goals and worry about you. So, because that's 6 months is very vulnerable. That's what people, that 6 to 10 month window is where you see people just fade away.
And
in my opinion.
Well, I agree with you, John, and I think that what happens is people get to a point to where they've made a lot of money, and they think that they're just crushing it. I spoke to somebody that you and I both know, and they told me, hey, I had 60 grand in my bank account. I was happy and realized that money didn't mean that much. And in my head, I was going, well, like that'll get you through like a couple months with a full family. So I think that what happens a lot of times is people, they start to make good money, and like you said, they get comfortable. How do they reset their vision, though? Like, how do they actually go, okay, yes, now I'm making good money. Maybe I realize that money's not my only motivation. How do they go from that to, okay, now it's all about leading people, or how do they reset their motivation to something else that's not just monetary?
Right. Well, Dick DeVos had an interesting quote. He said, profits were not our immediate goal, but the natural and appropriate outcome of doing everything else right. So yes, you're making a lot of money. Okay. But if your whole life is just about money, you're going to find yourself alone, and material things are not always going to make you happy. It definitely brings quality of life. Don't get me wrong. But the mindset should be, like, why does Tom Brady keep coming back and playing? The guy's already won 5 or 6 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
He's got $100 million in the bank. His wife has $400 million in the bank. They have 4 beautiful kids. Why does he keep doing this? Because it's not about the money anymore. He doesn't need $10 million or $5 million. For him, it's about being the greatest of all time, right? That mindset of legacy and helping others and growing, in my opinion, needs to take over. The money will come along with that. Yes, at first you need to pay your bills and get your student loans paid off and stuff like that.
Sure.
So yeah, you want to be hungry and fight, but at some point, stop worrying about that. Just have the right behaviors. Want to make a company better. Want to make a family better, and like start to see the value and quality of life and things. And that's when I think you'll shake off the whole. I got $200,000 a year. I'm happy. Well, you'll make $400,000 and run a company someday, or if not more, if you keep seeing the difference you're going to make in people's lives.
Right.
So that's one of the ways to approach it.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. What are the things that because you have really good perspective. You just have good perspective on life, and I'm always you and I are always talking on the phone, and I'm often getting perspective from you. Um, you've talked to me a lot about how just young people get caught up in small things that when they get older they realize that it doesn't matter. I think that's a lot of value for people listening as well. I mean, what are things that you've seen? Because you're around college students all day long and just young people. Um, where are some gaps where they're missing some perspective that you're always giving them? Are there things that they think matter a lot now that, you having been through that, you realize now it doesn't matter so much? Are there some
Yeah.
areas like that?
Well, high charging people like the ones you and I deal with, students going to really good schools, people like that, they tend to not be able to differentiate between important and urgent. They think everything's urgent. Didn't call somebody back, almost have a heart attack. I mean, when I was about 24, 25 years old, something like that, I was having chest pains because I was doing really well in sales, but I was waking up in the middle of the night writing myself notes. That's how nuts I was about succeeding.
Yeah.
To a point where if anything went wrong, I would have chest pains. Well, I went into the hospital and the doctor brings me in and he closes the curtain after checking me out and he goes, "What's going on?" And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Because there's nothing wrong with you." And he gave me, anyway, let me sum it up by saying, he said, "John, you've got to differentiate between important and urgent. You think everything's urgent. It's not. Sometimes the customer can wait till tomorrow, right?" So one of the ways I'd like the people listening to your podcast to take away is, here's one way to handle that. Tell yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, what is it? So sometimes with my wife when we're arguing or whatever, I say, "Honey, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like a 2. It's not a big deal."
Yeah.
What it does is it helps you put it into perspective and the person you're talking to put it into perspective. So one of the takeaways is just maybe use that example and say on a scale of 1 to 10, this is like maybe a 3. It's not a 9. A heart attack is a 9. A tragedy is a 10.
Yeah.
Don't put everything in that. Give it a 3. All right, it's important, but it's not urgent.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Once you put it into perspective, you'll be more successful in life.
Yeah. How does somebody deal with a difficult boss? I mean, because there's a lot of young people that their perspective is my boss hates me, and they become very myopic on the difficulty of just feeling like they're underappreciated. How do they, in this whole light of perspective, how does somebody gain perspective and some altitude on, and as you would say, a 30,000-foot view on what's really going on in that relationship and how to manage that in their own head? Because I find that often people think that their bosses hate them and all of that, and in reality, they're making that up themselves. Do you have some ideas on how?
Let me give you an example.
Sure.
No, sorry, I'm sorry. You finished your sentence. I thought you were done. My apologies.
No, go ahead. That was it. I was just going to say, do you have some examples or things you can talk about where, managing a boss, managing a leader, how can you do that effectively in a sales job or in any role, really?
Here's an example. A lot of people have anxiety about speaking to an audience in front of a crowd or giving a presentation for a job interview. And what I always tell people is, students and professionals, people don't care as much as you think they do. So when you say, "Oh, my boss is out to get me," or this and that, your boss is busy with a lot of other things. They're not out to get you, okay? They don't care as much as you think they do. Same thing when you give a presentation. I got 50 people in front of me. I must have given hundreds of speeches to thousands of people in my career, and I still get butterflies to this day in the first 2 minutes.
Wow.
And I tell myself, they don't care as much as I think they do. So I tell myself that. And then I manage it by starting off with maybe a joke or give updates on something or just a little, So I manage those demons. But the key is to remember people don't care as much as you think they do. And I think that's a disease we have. Maybe disease is the wrong word, but a weakness we have as human beings is because we think we're more important than we really are. Yeah, bosses get mad, but they got 15 other people to manage too. I mean, and pressure from their boss. They're not thinking about you all day long, so don't do it to yourself.
Yeah, that's really good. So I think that ties nicely into your book. I want to talk about why you wrote a book, why that was important to you, and what that's meant for not only you or your students, but thousands of students around the country who are now using it in their classrooms. What was the spark to write that book?
Funny because we were successful in sales competitions, so a publisher contacted me and said, how would you feel about writing a book on sales? And he said something that people can actually use instead of just concepts, because most college books, they tend to be conceptual.
Sure.
And I said, that's interesting. So school got permission to do it, made sure they endorsed me, and then I wrote the book, and we wrote it twofold. We wanted to cover the sales process, but we wanted to have every chapter with something you can take away into your life right now, whether it's you and your spouse, whether it's you, your job as a waiter in a restaurant. It doesn't matter what the situation is. This book applies to everybody in every single chapter.
Wow.
Even my MBA students who are running companies, I use some of the material for them, and they tell me this is the most usable, actionable item book or stuff I've ever seen. And it's not because my book is some brilliant thing. It's different because you can actually use it. It tells you how to improve your listening skills right now. And here, and we give examples that relate to people right now. So I've had people tell me, I've tried this with my girlfriend at home. I tried this with my boss. John, it's working. I'm like, I know it's working. That's why we wrote the book.
Wow.
You can talk about this till you're blue in the face, but if everybody is good at learning. But what they found in research is that the real successful people not only learn, but then they go do it.
Yeah.
And they have a good attitude when they do it.
Sure.
Right? You can take golf lessons in Tiger Woods for 2 hours and you'll learn a lot. But if you don't go to the practice range every Friday and practice what he taught you, you wasted your time.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why the book not only teaches you how to do it, but then we say, now go do it.
Right.
Otherwise you waste time.
Well, I think that's a great point because you're right. I mean, I was having a conversation with somebody in our office this morning about how I kind of realized that even myself, I mean, I consume a lot of content, podcasts, videos, books, whatever. But how much can I actually absorb? And then the only pieces of content that really matter are the ones that I'm then taking and going and taking action on. So I think that's great. Now, what I love, John, about your book is that you're right. It's not just about selling. It's about everything in a person's life. I mean, they can take it everywhere, and I know that's why people get so much value out of it, even if they're not going to be a salesperson. Because your class is what, 150 people? You have multiple classes, but I think that one is 150, maybe 200.
Yeah, it ranges between 100 and I've had as many as 180. So I mean, it's a really big class.
Yeah. So sure. So I mean, there you go. So all those people are obviously not going to become salespeople, but they can definitely take something out of that class. Where did each of those points come from in the book? I mean, you have so many different points that you talk about. Are they all just personal experiences and things that you were able to elaborate on?
Yeah. Well, I took my career in sales. And then I think one of the gifts I have, not to sound pompous, but I do believe I see this well, is I have the ability to put myself in a 22-year-old's life as a waiter. And I tell my students, you're not just a waiter. You're actually practicing presentation skills, listening skills, accountability. If the food came out wrong, don't blame the cook. Make it right because you're the face of the company. So when I'm able to take real sales concepts and put it into what they're used to, which is retail, selling retail, waiters. I mean, you pick the topic. Some of them are engineers, and then they'll say, actually, most of the compliments I get are from the non-sales students.
Really?
Because these are the people who are sometimes introverted, sometimes insecure. And they take some of the stuff and go, holy cow, I'm not as bad as I thought I was. And it's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Or I'm not as bad as I thought I was. Or I'm better than I gave myself credit for. Yes, you are. So there you have it.
What's the topic in your book that people come back to you the most on? Is there something in your book that people are always thanking you for or that it maybe impacts them the most?
I think it's the listening skills because the issue in society is that we think because we heard with our ears, we heard you. But imagine this. I'm looking sideways. Imagine you come home, you're my girlfriend, you're my boyfriend, whatever it is, and you say, hon, I had a terrible day at work, and I'm watching TV, and I look at you and go, yeah, tell me about it. But I'm looking at the TV. Yes, I hear you with my ears, but to my girlfriend or wife or customer, I'm sending the signal that something else has my attention. And in my mind, well, I'm just checking the score. Keep talking because I can multitask. What I don't realize is that I have the power to fill up someone's bucket or empty someone's bucket. So when I look the other way, they may think I don't care, so I'm emptying their bucket. But if I look at them and go, what happened? Tell me all about it. And I'm looking at them and listening. Now they're fired up and they can tell, wow, John's a good listener. He actually cares. I'm filling up their bucket.
Yeah.
So the power of listening is the one that comes back tenfold, because I think we're all guilty of mentally drifting, physically looking a different way. We all hear what's going on, but we're sending a bad signal to people, especially in the world when your customer is sitting in the office and you're looking out the window, or you're texting someone and your customer is like, okay, want me to come back in 10 minutes? Especially with children. Let me just leave you with this. Someday when you have children, how do you think a child feels when they're talking to you and you're texting? You're sending the signal to your child that something else is more important than them, and that is a missed tragedy. Don't ever, ever do that. Stop what you're doing to make them the most important person in the room by looking at them, listening to them, and making them feel like they're the most important thing. Because that's another disease in our society that's just mentally distracted.
Gosh, that is so good. I love that example because it's true. I love how you just said you have the ability to fill someone's bucket or to drain someone's bucket. Or empty it. I mean, you really, truly do. And are there any other techniques in there? Is it really just, hey, let me take my focus off of what I'm looking at right now and let me put it fully on you? Because I think there's more to that also. Like, am I actively listening to you and responding, or am I just listening and being a blank stare?
Absolutely. Your body language is a powerful weapon. So when you say active listening, I'm really glad you brought that up. Your ability to smile and nod or repeat back what you heard. Like, for example, so you're telling me they did this, and this, and what you're really doing is letting them know, yeah, that's exactly what happened. You're reaffirming through active listening skills, and again, you're filling their bucket, because if you don't repeat back and you're looking out the window, oh yeah, that's terrible, that's too bad. That person's a real jerk. The person that's telling you the story is like, okay, all right, I just thought you want to hear, thanks, Dad, or thanks, customer.
Yeah.
So when you do listening, both of you, your energy goes up, because now you're both up here, and that's a powerful weapon in business. Is you have the ability to make people leave your office fired up or half empty, going, yeah, I just thought you'd like to hear the stats, John.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm typing, yeah, just let me know. Wow.
Yeah.
It hurts people. A weapon. It's a good weapon to have.
Wow.
As a professional. Again, it's not about being better than someone. It's just having an awareness, one stroke better than another boss or another, person.
Gosh, that's so good. Will you share the short story real quick because if I recall correctly, when that really hit you was a story with your daughter when she was younger, correct?
Yeah.
Will you share that?
I will, because I think it's valuable. So I remember I was crushing it in my early 20s, and we had two little kids, maybe 3 and 1 at the time. And I came home from a long day, and in my mind, I killed it. I just walked in the door. She came running down the hallway, and I said, just give me a damn minute. I just walked in the door. And she kind of walked away like a broken puppy, and it hit me really, really hard that if I do this again, 1 or 2 more times, she'll never come down that hallway again. And I learned that, think about it, I go to my job and I'm nice to everybody all day long. I'm selling, I'm nice to my coworkers when I come home, and I'm not nice to my own kids.
Yeah.
What does it say about my character? I'm a fake if that's my behavior. So I need to be more kinder and sweeter and patient with my kids than I do anybody outside the house. But I learned that, and never again. Every time she ran down that hallway, I said, you know what? This is my most important customer of the day, is running down the hallway. You damn right I'm going to smile and pick her up and wrestle her and this and that. And that's how I got out really well. I'm tight with all my kids for those reasons. My kids are tight with me. I don't have drama like some families have. My kids love me. It's because I made a big deal out of them. But I learned that first time. Listen, I'm not proud to tell that story, but I do think it's worth sharing, and I'm glad you asked me.
Gosh, that's so good, John. I think that helps so many people. I think that what many don't realize is that there may be unhappiness in a relationship or in a business environment is actually due to them. It's due to it's not because their spouse doesn't like them or their kids don't want to talk to them or their boss doesn't enjoy them. It may be it very well may be that they're just not listening. They're not filling up somebody's bucket. So why would they receive anything back in return?
Well, let me give you an example. Check this out. So years later, I was a senior vice president. One of my employees said, I this proposal's got to be out by Thursday. I'll just stay tonight. One of my kids has a softball game, but I'll just bang this out and get it done. And I said to her, you need to go to that softball game. And she's like, yeah, but I got to get this done. I said, so you're willing to throw your own kid under the bus for a proposal? This is what you're telling me. What are you going to do to me? When something's more important. Like, if you're not going to protect your own kids and value that more than a proposal, which you can come in early tomorrow and do, what are you going to do to me when the situation arises? So be careful when you tell people, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take one for the team. My kids will wait. I wouldn't want you on my team if you're going to throw your own kids under the bus. What are you going to do to me when times get rough? So you need to have values and say, you know what? It's 4:30. I told my family I'm going home. Right? This is going to have to wait till tomorrow. That's character. Sometimes you need to tell people they have to wait because I have other priorities and I gave a commitment. I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
It goes, and that's hard to do.
Yeah, I agree. And especially, people that are coming out of school, they're getting married, they're creating families. That's difficult. I mean, there's a large learning curve there, and I think that a lot of mistakes are to be made in that process. But eventually, it really just comes down to perspective and being able to really humble yourself and be present with the people that mean something to you. I love that example of if you're willing to throw your own kids under the bus, why would I want you on my team? I think that's good. That's very valuable to a lot of people.
Get to the softball game. I should almost do a chapter in a new book someday called Go to the Softball Game. That should be the name of the chapter.
Yeah.
By not going, sending a really bad message to me. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah. What's the one thing, John, that you would tell people that are maybe starting out a career, or maybe they're in a career that they're not loving? What's something that you would tell those people? I mean, having the incredible perspective that you do and the experience that you have, what would you share with those people to with your message? What would you tell them?
Well, I'm a Christian, okay? So I really believe God has a plan, and whether you buy into this or not, I think the takeaway is this: things will work out in the timeline it's supposed to. So sometimes you do have a job or two out of the gate. It doesn't mean you failed or made a bad decision. That experience, whatever it is going to be good for you down the road, right? It's all about the in-flight corrections. So sometimes you have to accept that it's going to take time to get wherever it is you're going to get there, but you'll get there. I didn't start teaching college till I was 39 years old. And I'm telling you right now, I couldn't have taught college at 29. I wasn't mentally ready. I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't seasoned enough. So it happened. And it's the best corporate thing that's ever happened to me. I love it now. But it took me 15, 17 years of, bruises, black and blue eyes, symbolically, winning sales, losing sales, bad days to give back. So it happened in the timeline it was supposed to. So I would tell people, if you're in a job you're not crazy about, first of all, welcome to the party.
Yeah.
Second of all, patience. Just, it's a 35-year run. You're 23, 24, 26 years old. Relax. Yeah. Do your job well. Learn as much as you can. It's okay to keep your eyes out for other things. But in the meantime, put your life into it now while you are there to get the max out of it. This way, when you leave, the next job, you'll be that much more better, brighter, deeper, smarter. Like, you got experience now to share with others. You're only getting better. So relax, patience. And I think one of the greatest challenges people have in their early 20s is patience. They don't have it. They want to conquer the world. I got my college degree and a year experience. How come I'm not making $100,000 a year yet? Relax. The money will come.
Yeah.
It'll come. The behavior is where you need to put your priority.
Right. Gosh, I that's so good. We have to do more of these because there's so many topics that I want to cover with you. But I want to, keep respectful of your time. Where can people find your book? Tell us the name, and then where can people find it?
The name of the book is Professional Selling in the 21st Century, 7 Ways, 7 Times. And that 7 ways, 7 times, what it means is sales is not just one thing done well. It's a whole bunch of little things done well at the same time.
Yeah.
It's how you dress, your attitude, your ability to call people back, blah, 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 blah. So you can find it on Amazon. You can find it on the publisher's Kendall Hunt. It's out there. I mean, used copies, electronic copies. It's a great book. It's used by quite a few universities, and actually several companies have purchased it and used it for their corporate training. So
wow, that's great.
We've
I think
done okay.
I think you should do an audiobook.
Really?
Yeah, I would love to hear an audiobook of you reading the book. That'd be fantastic.
Well, maybe you and I should do one together because it's we come at it from 2 different generations, and I think you've got so much to say, and I can offset some of your stuff, you can offset some of mine, and maybe we'll just do one together.
I think it'd be cool to do. I've been hearing audiobooks recently where they'll read it, and then at the end they do, like at the end of each chapter, they'll do like a 5-minute little podcast type of thing. I think that'd be cool to kind of read through it and then do just a conversation back and forth at the end of each chapter before going into the next one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me leave your audience with one comment. The person on top of the mountain didn't fall there. Remember that.
That's great. It's very true. Well, John, I'm so grateful for you. You've become one of my greatest friends, and I'm just appreciative for everything that we've shared together. So I really appreciate you coming on and taking an hour to do this, and I hope to do many more because I think it brings tremendous value to the listeners and the audience. So love spending time with you as always, my friend.
I hope someone somewhere contacts you and says, you know what, I learned something in that podcast and my life is better. That's my hope. This hour you and I just banged out.
Me too. Me too. Well, we will talk soon, and thank you again.
You got it. Thanks, Evan.